Good morning. Welcome to the Standing Committee on Education and Economic Growth. My name is Zach Bell, the chair. Happy Friday morning. We have our, just want to welcome everyone. We have our members, Brad Trivers. We have Trish Altus, Lynn Lunn, and subbing in today, we have Robert Henderson. Welcome. And also, I do want to welcome someone in the gallery today, Jack, who's been here quite a few times. So, hi, Jack. Thanks for coming. We're going to be receiving two briefings, actually, today. One on the topic of retention of international students post-graduation. Before we hear from our first group, can I get a motion of adoption for the agenda? Thank you, Robert. So moved. So we're going to start off, first of all, with the UPEI International Student Office. So what I'll get each of you to do first is just to say your name and your position. And then after that, you can start right into your presentation. We'll save questions until the end, if that's all right with you. Awesome, thanks. So yeah, you can start. Whoever wants to start, just say your name and your position. And,
good morning, everybody. My name is Jerry Wang. I'm the Director of Recruitment and First Year Advisement, also the International Student Service at the UPEI. I've been there since 2006.
Very nice.
Good to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Natter. I'm the Vice President, Academic and Research at UPEI.
Perfect.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rochelle Greathouse, and I report to Jerry. I'm the Senior International Advisor at UPEI.
Perfect. So thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll let you begin if you're ready to go.
Okay. Again, good morning, everyone. I will give a presentation here. It's about 11 slides, and Jerry and I will subdivide the work. I'll do the first half, and then I'll pass it over to Jerry. Or is that correct? That's how or are you going to do the first half? Okay. I will pass it over to Jerry, who will do the first half.
All right. Okay. So, so first of all, we want to express our gratitude to the province for all the support that we have been getting from different offices for our work, and we're very happy to be here to share some updates and information about, mainly about the retention of international students, but also to give you guys a little bit of context about the recruitment services. So we thought that that will give you a more complete picture of the work we do at the university. So at the university, I mentioned I came here I started in 2006, but kind of over the past 2 decades, kind of 25 years, international education, internationalization of different aspects of UPEI has been becoming more and more important, very similar to almost all Canadian U.S. university colleges, so UPEI being one of them. And you know, the benefits of international students on our campus, internationalization of our curriculum, internationalization in research has been tremendous to not only to UPEI, but also to the province, to the community. And we believe that will be a long-term strategy for the university. So I'll just kind of go go through the slides, but I don't want to spend too much time on the slides. You have already, probably read them. So we believe the increase of international students on our campus adds to the diversity, strength of not only of our campus culture, but also research, student and learning experience, and also prepares our own students to become global citizens. And very often, our international, actually increasingly international students, they would like to come, not only to come, but also to come, study, and stay. And actually that has been the federal government strategy throughout probably the past 10 years. Before that, I was kind of, I think, still trying to figure out the better way to go about this, but I think during the past 10 years, my observation is the federal government has also been a very strong supporter of international education. And the international students, after they come here, they would, study, they would have their networking, and like the slides show, very often they will probably put down their roots after graduation, and some of them, they may create the businesses to not only to make the economy stronger, but also to create job opportunities. And of course, in the labor force, international students are becoming more and more important. Go ahead. Okay, thanks. These are a lot of numbers, but just basically the basic idea is to show you so during the past few years, the increase of the number of international students on our campus, very similar to a lot of Canadian university and colleges. So one thing I think it's worth mentioning is, so even though we are a smaller player in the whole international education landscape, but PEI, so the province of PEI, along with language, Holland College, UPEI, College de Lille, and other international education providers have been doing a lot of very positive, tremendous work. And the province of PEI, in national study and research, PEI has been one of the most prominently featured international education destination proportionately for international students. So as I mentioned, we're very grateful for all the different support services from not only the province but also the community. So as you can see, the total numbers have been increasing. Number of countries has been increasing. The changes is always positive. The past couple of years is a little challenging because of the pandemic, but still we were able to maintain and increase our numbers. So, because I thought that this will be a little bit helpful, because I want to show you the number of students who finish studies at the UPEI, meaning these will be the students seeking their exit options, either grad school, work, or immigration. At UPEI, Rochelle, being one of the international student advisors, we have a small but I think a very efficient and a very effective international student advising team. We provide a whole wide range of services to international students. So in our office, we started from the very beginning, from going to education fairs to recruit the students. When they're ready to apply, we process their applications. After they apply, when they're ready to come, deposit, finding housing, which we'll talk more about later, ready to register, and then coming here, provide orientation services all the way to when they're ready to graduate. So a lot of services. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. And I think that's how we have made international education, not only recruitment, but also services, very effective for our students. Just to say, the Study and the Stay program, which we have been doing for a few years, and it's jointly funded, sponsored by both the province and also ACOA. It's relatively new to the services we provide, but it has been very important for retaining international students. These, I won't get into all the stories, but you probably, you see students probably everywhere. You go to superstore, you see them, and then you go to banks, you go, CRA has a UPEI students, and the bio industry has a large number of UPEI graduates. I personally know quite a few students. I didn't use names. I thought it'd be, better just to give you some idea of, you probably know who the students are, where their business are. But just to show, they have very much been integrated into the community, and they are now part of the community. And I think the presence of the students has been making the community much more vibrant and also very growing oriented. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Netter for more recommendations.
So thank you, Jerry. I'll speak now on some recommendations. So international graduate students are increasingly interested to come to PEI and UPEI in particular. They play a really important role in the research and economic development of the province. Many of them start up companies themselves or contribute to the knowledge economy in the province. So but there is one aspect that UPEI is unable to compete in this sense with other universities in Atlantic Canada, and that's around graduate fellowships. All other All other research universities in the region and most across the country will have core funding for graduate fellowships. It's a form of financial support that allows professors to attract the best and brightest graduate students. So we don't have those at UPEI. So a recommendation would be for UPEI to have core funded support of graduate student fellowships. This research intensiveness through graduate students, again, is a major contributor to driving innovation and economic development in the province, and it would therefore being able to attract graduate students through fellowships would allow the university to continue contributing to the population growth and economic growth strategies of PEI. So that would be one recommendation. Cooperation between the university and the province, more of it. Jerry gave thanks to the province's support. I'd like to echo that and my gratitude on behalf of the university. And areas that I think are important for that continuation of cooperation. Firstly, in co-op education and experiential learning, providing opportunities for international students to have work terms as part of their education is a major contributing factor for them to find a job here in the province after they graduate and stay in the province. So it's really important for retention. International students are also very innovative and creative. They have started up companies, and so continued support for entrepreneurship programs would also be another way to retain graduate students in the province. Continued promotion of mentors for UPEI Study and Stay program. Cooperation between the PEI Office of Immigration and the International Studies Office. That would be another area that we continue building on that. Maintaining current healthcare support for international students and supporting them for those who have applied to become permanent residents to stay in PEI. I'll speak to that a little bit later in another slide. And monitoring the flow of out-of-province applicants for the AIP program. It's a priority for graduates from PEI institutions. Some recommendations for attracting and retaining international students. This would be from the province's perspective. Promoting the benefits of diversity in the workforce. So employers are increasingly looking to diversify their employees, their workforce. There's a host of benefits for doing that. International, people who have backgrounds from different countries, they bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. Many studies have shown that diversity increases profitability, workplace retention, and satisfaction overall. So the province continuing to promote the values of that. I think efficient processing of international graduate applications for permanent resident status is very important. There is a provincial nomination program. There's also a federal component. Right now it takes a really long time. It's over 2 years before that thing works through. And a recommendation would be looking at the efficiency of how that process is working. Increasing the flexibility on PR requirements for work contracts. Right now there is a 2-year requirement. Many international students wouldn't be able to secure a 2-year contract. It may only be a 1-year position. So that puts us at risk of losing a lot of really good people there. So the recommendation would be to consider 1 year with an intention of renewal rather than the current guideline that's 2. In the province's ongoing efforts around affordable housing, I think consideration of international graduates will be a recommendation to include that perspective, as well as transportation. So wider services, affordable services, rural public transit. International students are Increasingly, they're living in rural communities, but they may have jobs in the city. So it's a really important factor to look at these issues in retaining international students and graduates in the province. And continuing to maintain IRSA's services. That's Immigration, Refugee, the Services
Yeah.
Agency, Association. Continuing to maintain and to build upon those. I should have mentioned to you at the beginning, and I plead for forgiveness on this one, that my wife and I recently moved to PEI to start my role at the university in May. So I'm a new Islander, and I hear that they call us types CFAs, come from a ways, but I prefer to correct them and say I'm an IBC, so that's an Islander by choice.
That's perfect.
I think that is it. So thank you for your attention.
Perfect. Thank you and welcome to PEI. So what we will do is we will open the floor now to questions. As there are three of you, if, say, for example, you decide to answer a question, but you'd like to add something, or Michelle would like to add something, by all means, just get my attention, and we'll just give a little pause in between questions just to give everyone an opportunity to answer. So do we have any questions? We'll start with Lynn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for this presentation. I particularly appreciate how clear and concise your recommendations are. You have a really clear picture of what we should be pushing forward, and I'm very interested in unpacking that a little bit, if we may. Your new graduate fellowship recommendation, I think, is an excellent one, and I'm curious if you can speak a bit to the Atlantic context for graduate fellowships.
Yes, I'd be glad to do that. So UPEI is a research university, and we are competing with others in Atlantic Canada. So Memorial University, for example, in Newfoundland, would have a graduate fellowship program from the province that is core funded. It's about $12 million per year, specifically targeted to that function. So that provides support for graduate students that then professors can use some of their research grant, they use the core funding, and that allows professors to hire more graduate students. In PEI, there is no core funded graduate fellowship. So what that means is that when our professors compete with other universities, they would be able to have maybe a half dozen or 10 graduate students. Our professors maybe only could have one or two. As a result, they cannot compete nationally with other universities. They're unable to bring the same level of tri-council funding from the federal government, and generally uncompetitive. So I think the core foundation of building an innovative economy and research intensiveness at the university is being competitive with graduate fellowships. Memorial is one example. I mentioned, I think it's 11.5 million or somewhere in there to be exact. I just rounded it up to 12. I think Dalhousie University, the funding is about $24 million per year. I would, I think that for our university, again, to compete and to attract and retain graduate students, that would be a very important initiative.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that answer, and I think it really highlights the disparity between the provinces whenever we're talking about this. So thank you for that. I'm also interested in housing for international students. I know I have heard this a lot. I'm curious, you had said we need to consider the international context specifically, and I'm curious what that would look like from your perspective. What are some of the differences for housing that we need to be taking into consideration that might not be currently being considered?
So for example, because students are from so many countries and cultures, if you live in a big city, transportation from your place to any place, it's 10-15 minutes. So here, because it's harder to find housing closer to the university, so students very often they find places kind of quite far away from you. Stratford or Cornwall, but then the service is like it's a 45 minutes a bus. There are reasons for that, so that's a little different. And also the expectation, because students, when international students are here, they do pay the twice. Tuition fees are higher, and then on top of that, the living expenses it's another component. Versus domestic students, if you are from PEI, you get a lot of George Coast funding than if you live home. So the expectations are a little bit different. Michelle?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the big things that we see now is that as the university grows, there's more labs in the evening, So the idea of having a bus service that ends at 5:30 is really completely insufficient, for the needs of, I would say, this isn't just international students, but most students on Prince Edward Island. They have to look farther out of the city to be able to find affordable housing. International students, when they're here, are capped at 20 hours a week off-campus work. So it's not like they can just increase their work to cover the difference in, the cost of affordable housing. So, affordable housing is a huge topic, but I think that one of the things is also looking at increasing the transportation. We've had, some people that would be like, oh, I could offer a house to a student. We had a fantastic response from the community after some outreach was done. But the problem was transportation. Unlike most local students have cars. Students are not going to be arriving from another country and then just going out and buying a used car. So they are confined to the core or public transit. So that's a big difference.
If I could add just a little, there are a number of programs at UPEI that are in very high demand that are, all of our programs, I think, are very strong, but we're just constrained in enabling, high-quality international students from coming to the province and to the university simply because of the challenge with the housing situation. So there are programs that have capped their numbers or have not been able to accept students because of this constraint. So the new residence will be opening later this year or in January. So that'll be very helpful. It'll have 270 beds, I think. But that will be filled immediately. And then I think this time next year we'll be in a very similar situation where there are far more qualified, outstanding students that want to come to the province and the university, but simply the city can't accommodate because of the housing situation.
If I may add a little more, so in comparison to bigger, large cities like Montreal, Toronto, or even Halifax, so in those cities you have a bigger population of immigrants from different, like they have their, the Indian community, Filipino, Chinese community. So then those communities very often can absorb more international students. There's a lot of channels. Here we have an increasing diverse culture society, but still we don't have that critical mass, for Indian community to take 40 students. So that also makes it a little more challenging for us. So we try very hard, from university advising, we check out houses for students, but very often the co-nationals, other places can provide more support than we can do. We do try our best, but it's pretty challenging.
It would be interesting to explore ideas in the province, and I'm not sure to what extent this is already ongoing. I'd really be interested in continuing this discussion around more private developers building units that could it's a bit of a puzzle to me. Like, it's obvious it would be a very profitable venture, for private developers to develop spaces, because we know there's a huge demand, and we're bursting at the seams at the university that needs this. Private development, don't understand quite why more of that isn't happening. Another one is there are REITs, real estate investment trusts. There's obviously a very clear, profitable venture in pursuing this that I'm not sure why more of that isn't happening. But again, this is getting a little bit off topic. We're talking about recruiting and retaining international students.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just ask one more question and then I'll let you go to someone else. Housing is one of those core issues that touches on everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You could really come back to just about every every topic and draw a circle around housing. But one more area I did want to touch on was your recommendation to increase flexibility on the requirements for work contracts from 2 years to 1 year with the prospect of a second year. And I can definitely understand, particularly in a market such as ours currently, that securing a 2-year contract is probably challenging. And I'm just wondering, in other jurisdictions, do we see a 2-year contract? Is that a standard requirement?
Varies province to province. I mean, one of the reasons I understand the logic behind the 2-year contract is that it can take that long to process the application. So they don't want to have somebody starting a PR application with a 1-year contract and then lose that job and not be able to finish the process. However, I think it's how a lot of positions work on Prince Edward Island, and this is not just international students, is that the 1-year contract is very common.
Absolutely.
But people have those 1-year contracts renewed oftentimes for 10 years, right? So I think that if there's a firm commitment from the employer that, it's like 1-year contract and, expectation to renew, that's a little bit different. And it may kind of help with that problem of having the process take longer than the 1 year.
I think, sorry if I may add a little
Please.
more. I think here in PI, as I mentioned, employers are getting more experience with hiring people of international backgrounds. But I think it's still, according to survey, CBIE, Canadian Bureau for International Education, did a survey, including UPEI students. A lot of students in this survey suggested that a lot of employers, because they would like to hire somebody, but for them to make a 2-year commitment, it's a little too much. They are interested, but the 1 year is what they can offer because they want to make sure it's a good fit. You can add value to the team, and so it's kind of a tiny mismatch. They would like to make it longer, but to start with, they would like the 1 year. Other places probably they have more experience with hiring international students, like Toronto or Vancouver. But here, the employers, they are just not very many are ready to make that 2-year commitment.
I'm sorry, I just want to add one more thing to that. Because you mentioned the CBIE 2021 survey. Mm-hmm. That was a national survey, and in that survey, university for our international services, we scored in the highest bracket across Canada. So we are providing very good level of service to our students, and it's like something like 65% plus want to stay in Prince Edward Island post-graduation. Mm-hmm. So it's not an issue of students not wanting to stay. I've been doing post-grad work permits since 2015, and often when I'm doing the application, I talk to students, okay, what's your job? What are you going to be doing? They often, they are getting jobs here. They want to stay here. So that 2015 was, I'm off to Toronto, I'm off to Vancouver, that's different now. Our own students saying they want to stay in Prince Edward Island.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, you can go on. Someone else. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, so one of the questions you'd mentioned there in the recommendation was maintain current healthcare supports for international students. Maybe explain, so what supports are they receiving at the moment, or what has to be maintained, and how does that whole process work?
So right now, quite a few provinces, I think in BC, Ontario, PI. So once you are an international student in PI and you get your SIN number, and you are qualified to work, then you can apply for the PI provincial health card. So that has been, 3-4 years in line with other provinces. So that has been very popular with international students, and they feel welcomed. Like, when we go to recruit, the federal government said, okay, you tell them, we don't have a ranking, we're welcoming, we're diverse. And the students are like, oh, you are really doing what you told me. So that's really great. We hope that will continue. And then the other point then put there is, so once you are an international student, you finish your study, you get your degree, and then once you graduate, you are not an international student anymore, you are on work permit. So when you are on work permit, between that and getting your PR, there's a little bit of a gap, because you would lose your student status. Along with that, you lose other things. And if you are a grad student, like Dr. Nader said, then you have the wife, your children. So that part we hope, kind of we can better the services for students, and I believe that's a very good gesture that we want to keep you here and to make you feel supported in the work.
Rob?
So when that gap occurs, so in other words, when they graduate and they're now not an international student anymore, so do they have to pay out of pocket for that period of time until they get, or do they buy insurance, or how does this work?
It's become more of a problem in the last couple of years, because normally what happens is as soon as you apply for your postgrad work permit, you're eligible to start working full-time. However, your health card is linked to your study permit, and your study permit automatically expires 3 months post-graduation. It used to be that the federal government would have those postgrad work permit applications processed, usually within that 3-month period, so there was very little time that you would be without having a SIN, because you need that on your work permit, you need that to be able to have the health card. But federal government is just taking so long to process applications now. We're looking at, often 5-6 months, where the students have now lost, they don't have their work permit yet, so they can't get a PEI health card. So they're having to either purchase their own health insurance, and I think in most cases they're probably going without, and just going without services. I think that's probably happening for a lot of students.
Rob?
So does the federal government reimburse the province for that health expense, or is that a provincial expense that's incurred for those people who have their health card? There's no reimbursement from the federal government on that? Okay.
While they're a student, anybody in Prince Edward Island, if you have work permit rights, you are eligible for a PEI health card. So it doesn't matter if you are on a work permit or if you are a student who has work permit rights on their study permit. It's the same.
Rob?
Just on another subject here, when we talk a little bit about, you gave a lot of statistics about participants and students from international study that are in Prince Edward Island and what percentage of that, but is there any statistics about retention as far as how many actually stay here for, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it might be? I mean, as it pertains to PEI. So I think recently there was a StatCan study that had international students completed their studies. Less than half of international students remained in the province of study a year after graduation. So I'm just wondering how do we compare in Prince Edward Island? Are we better or worse?
Sure. So I talked to my colleagues in the study and the stay program just to give you brief numbers about the past 2 years, like the previous year. So across PEI, so Holland College, UPEI, College Studio, 3 institutions altogether, we have 100. So those are the students who are, recruited or qualified to join this special employment help program, specifically to stay in PEI. So altogether, 107 students, 31, about 1/3 are UPEI students. And then this year, so have 137 students altogether, and 50 are UPEI students. So we can see an increase in the total number of students from PEI and also from UPEI. Then to your question about the retention, because once you are in the program, then you are supported, you are networking, Chamber of Commerce, then you are employed, they still try to get an accurate picture of the retention. So their best stats tell them it's 85% of the students will still be here after they finish the 1 year. And so they send out a survey. I mean, some students do not reply, but a lot of students reply, and according to their numbers, 85% of the students will still be with regard to the study and the stay program.
We have a bit of an issue with the stats can.
Look what you
Honestly,
did, Rob.
Yeah, it's not.
because, the school, we would love to see more research done on this, and specifically tracking at the provincial level, because we know that we are graduating these students, and we know they want to stay. And from our experience, they are getting a lot of jobs after graduation. So we feel that the rate is actually much higher than the federal government rate is calculating. because they have some problems with their data. That's maybe a longer conversation that I can explain at some other time, but we feel that the data is not accurately being reflected on Prince Edward Island.
Just to
It's how they calculate the number of students. So what happens is when an international student enters Canada and they're issued a study permit for this institution, every institution in Canada has what's called a designated learning institution number. Okay, and so they say, okay, X number of students are here at UPEI. Then we have the responsibility as a university, every school in Canada does, to report on the number of students that are attending the school each semester. So I do a report twice a year that says, is the student full-time, part-time, no longer enrolled, graduated, whatever it happens to be. So then we report the number of students that we have back to them. There doesn't seem, and this is a bit of a federal issue, there doesn't seem to be a lot happening with that data after it goes back to readjust the numbers that are at UPEI or Holland College to actually represent, this is the number of actual international students you have in Prince Edward Island. And then from there we can track, okay, and how many are graduating, as Jerry showed in his chart. As our numbers of percentage of international students go up at the university, so is our numbers graduating.
Oh,
so there's, if they're saying there's 3,000 and they're basing the number who stay off of that 3,000, we would say, well, there's probably actually not 3,000, there's probably 1,500 that are actually here. So it's, I know it's a bit hard to explain why, but basically the numbers that they're using for the gross number of international students to base that ratio off is not correct.
Okay. Thank you. Rob, one more.
Yeah, because to me, the biggest issue does tend to be retention. And I will say, as an elected official, it's hard when you're saying the statistics of Stats Canada are inaccurate. So I'm led to, who do I believe, right? And but from what I've seen in Stats Canada, some of my information says that, Atlantic Canada has the lowest retention of graduates. And, I don't know how that compares to Prince Edward Island, but, if we are in that category, then we have to try to address the issues to ascertain what the problem is, and if the statistics are wrong and we are more equal, well, then that's a little different story. So I don't really have a question from that, but just have you brought that to the attention of Stats Canada that you disagree with their numbers?
We bring it to the attention of the IRCC, Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Trish? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to go back to the issue that you mentioned around health card access, cutting off 3 months, or was 3 months after graduation, right? I believe you said that for all of the paperwork to be processed by the federal government, it takes 5 to 6 months usually. It seems like a fairly simple solution that the province could enact right away would be to extend the health card access to 6 months instead of 3. So just,
it could just be
am
like
I understanding that?
even like a short-term, temporary, a 6-month status for a PEI health card while that transition happens or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because we do that when a study permit is being renewed. So for example, let's say a study permit has to be renewed and it's taking longer than that, and they have what's called maintained or implied status in Canada. Health PEI is allowing students to keep their health status during that period, but because they are actually changing status from student to worker post-graduation, they haven't allowed that grace period. So I think that, even just a short-term grace period until they actually get that work permit would be very helpful.
Okay, great.
Trish?
Yeah, thank you. And I always try to listen for what are some easy solutions to some problems. Most are quite complex, but this seems like something that could be adjusted quite quickly and easily. So just get that on the record. One of your recommendations here I'm very curious about, I think is so important. Promoting benefits of international diversity in PEI, the PEI workforce. I'm wondering if we can unpack that a little bit. What ways would you see the province enacting on this recommendation? What would you suggest that they do to promote that diversity?
Sure. So we would like more of a provincial effort to promote not only the benefits, but also the importance of diversity in workforce, because with regard to the clients, the business are serving labor versus sustainable growth and development, and also longer term engagement with a bigger community outside the PEI or outside Canada. I noticed during the past sometime the Cal Whitnell education. Yeah, I forgot. Sorry. Anyway, so his office has been organizing some trainings, and I was really happy. I attended one actually this week, so I was like, oh, but I think that's relatively new. I think it would be great to continue along that path. And also, I think, so that's from the provincial, from the office to talking employers and things. But I think it will also be great to invite employers to share their positive experiences of having a diverse workforce and why it has helped them or what challenges. So to give people a sense of reality to say, it's good, but this is what I will do, and this is what I benefited from this. So both internally, externally, I think it will be really good.
Trish?
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Just one more question. I'm wondering how does the university, stay in touch with graduates to see how they are doing in the labor market over, the short and then long term? How does that work?
Yes, so I can take that one. I think our advancement and development team, they stay in touch with alumni. We reach out to them. We continue to maintain relations, try to get their contact information, have annual reunion events, and that sort of thing. I think students are asked to stay in touch after they move, but they sometimes they don't. They move on, they move out of the province. If they stay within the province, often there is still a connection. The university does have a database of alumni. It keeps in touch with them. So there are various ways through events, through reaching out by email, newsletters, and so on. But it's obviously an area that we're trying to continue to build more connections and strengthen those over time.
I think also just on the informal level, a lot of staff keep in touch with students. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always sharing jobs to students, and I see when they get jobs, and I congratulate them. And I know that career services team, I see them on LinkedIn also sharing things with students, and kind of encouraging them along. So I think that we have it's a small province. We know a lot of the students, so we keep in touch that way. I also, I'm constantly doing reference checks, for students as well. So we keep in touch that way.
Yeah, sorry. On a formal note, so we do, in the International Student Office, we do invite and welcome UPEI alumni, international alumni who work either in the Atlantic Province or PEI. We invite them back to be kind of like a mentors to our current students. Because some of them, like Daniel, remember? Yeah, they will help with the networking, introduction to community services and things like that. So we do organize that. We have a buddy program, so older returning students with a new student, like a buddy. So that buddy program is wide open to students. So whether they're Canadian or international, if they have the time and energy, they will connect with the new students. So that's a way to engage somebody who has already done, but they are welcome to stay in touch. And very often, the students are very interested in contributing back to the university.
Thank you.
Brad?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for coming in today. I'm going through the presentation, and thank you. It's very enlightening. And again, I want to echo the appreciation for making your recommendations so clear and concise. But one thing that I think might be getting lost, and perhaps I'm just not guessing it, is the difference between undergrads and graduate students. And I was wondering if you can comment to what extent some of the issues and the recommendations apply to undergrads versus grads. Like, for example, the new graduate fellowships, I'm assuming that would be for graduate students, and so that wouldn't apply to undergrads at all. But when you get into some of the other, recommendations, they might apply to one of those groups of students more than the other.
Yeah, you're correct, Brad. I think the graduate fellowships are targeted to graduate students. If we just go through the list of other recommendations, I do think most, if not all the others, probably apply to both undergraduate and graduate students. Like the issue around work-integrated learning, entrepreneurship, it applies to both, study and stay. Most of these programs currently at the university are focused on undergraduate students because the number of graduate students is so small currently. I do think we have a lot of room for growth for graduate students. I'd like to see, doubling of that number, especially thesis-based. And then but all of these programs would be quite important to support the graduate students as well. It's just that the bulk of these right now are focused on undergraduate students because that is the vast portion of the student population.
Brad?
No, thank you for that. That's what I kind of suspected. But so when it comes to recruiting a graduate student versus an undergrad, the process would be much different, I would imagine. Like the grad students, you're really recruiting them because they're bringing something specific to the table in terms of research, perhaps even teaching, that sort of thing. Whereas with undergrads, they're just like any undergrad, they're pursuing their life and their career, etc., looking to build and educate themselves. So when going to, because you said the majority are undergrads, I wanted to learn a little bit more about that recruitment process. I mean, maybe starting with, I know when it comes to fees, I mean, international undergrads pay significantly more fees than domestic undergrads. And of course, when you're looking at UPEI or PEI, we've got supports for undergrads like the Coles Bursary and Island Advantage and these sorts of things as well. Not to mention the supports that we have for affordable housing and these sorts of things. So can you comment, sort of what an international student in undergrad faces in terms of fees and challenges versus a domestic one?
Okay. So generally speaking, across Canada, not only at UPEI, so international students, they do pay minimum twice. Some Ontario BC universities 3 or 4 times more than Canadian students. So at the PEI, we have, with regard to recruitment, we have been telling students UPEI is one of the most affordable. So right now it's about $15,000 to just tuition fees for 1 year, then plus your living expenses. So we would say probably $28,000 to $27,000 a year, the total expenses for one student, international student. That's for undergrad. That's why the grad students, they're more mature, less reliant on parents. It's a little expectation different. I think a grad the fellowship is very important. So having said that, so if we have 17, about close to over 16, close to 1,700 international students, the general number, they do contribute a lot to the community. If you 28,000 plus 1,600, that's a lot of money. That's why we appreciate also, last year, the quarantine, the province was very generous helping students. And the students, they do, now it's a social media era age. Anything they experience here, it's whatever, WhatsApp, whatever, Instagram, everybody will know that. So it is a very big expense and a very big family decision for the students. And I think back to UPEI, it is more, but I think it's still relatively more affordable in comparison to other provinces. Like a U of T would be minimum 52,000 1 year. UPEI is 15,000.
Yeah, we looked at with the student union, the comparison across Canada for not just our total tuition, but the ratio between what domestic students pay in that province versus what the international rate is, and we still have pretty much the lowest differential in Canada between domestic and international fees. So we are very a great choice for a lot of students.
And I think a big, that's the point where the provincial government and the UPEI work so closely, because if UPEI can't get proper financial support, then have to raise tuition fees for probably for everybody. So that's why we are very thankful for the good partnership between the province and the university. And I think the university senior team is also very aware of kind of, especially nowadays with the world economy challenges, students are very sensitive to cost. So the university, Dr. Nair can say, they are very aware and sensitive to the rise of tuition fees.
Can I add some comments also around, Brad, you talked about the difference in recruitment between undergraduate and graduate students from the perspective of recruitment. Often undergraduate students decide to come to UPEI for the choice of an academic program. They would like to become, for example, a computer scientist, or they'd like to become an engineer or a business. They'd like to get a degree, and our programs are really high quality. It's different on the graduate student side. Often they are looking for the reputation and the excellence of the person and the researcher. Mm-hmm. So there would be a graduate student that is very much interested in an area of physics, and they know there's a professor at the university that has a world-renowned reputation. That's what attracts them often. And so this is a connection that comes back to the fellowships, because in order for the professors to have competitive research programs, they do need to, it's like a chicken and egg, that they need to hire graduate students to be able to be competitive, to seek federal government support for research, and when they have that research funding, they can hire more graduate students. But if they can't hire graduate students from the beginning, they're not going to be competitive nationally, they can't get grants, and therefore they can't get graduate students, and it's that kind of cycle that works. So a lot of this all comes for the graduate student side. It comes back to the fundamental issue around fellowships.
Brad?
So, it's pretty clear that UPEI is very competitive internationally because, it's affordable for international students. You, of course, have great programs and done very well. And I venture to say that, the revenue as well you get from international students is very important to the university. Mm-hmm. But, of course, when you have international students who are coming to PEI, you want to make sure they're still going to be able to afford to do that, because it's not inexpensive, especially depending on the country they're coming from. There's a lot of countries, and hopefully there's bursaries and things like that. But how do you make sure that not only are they going to be able to come and pay their tuition and everything, but they're actually going to be able to afford to live on PEI? Like, do you do any vetting or checking that way?
Yeah, we do. We so I guess you're talking about graduate students now?
No, undergrads.
Undergrads.
Okay.
Oops, go ahead.
So when students, so this will get a little bit technical. So it involves the student visa application. So from the university's part, they apply, they give us documents, we give them mission letters. So then they got that, and then after that, it's between the students and the federal government. Federal government meaning IRCC, so Immigration Citizenship Canada. So they will apply for a visa. That's where the federal visa officers will be requiring students to provide the financial documents to say, I think minimum is 1 year tuition fee, living expenses, like 20-something thousand. And then they will also show that fund is renewable, it's sustainable. So we don't, because like they're from 100 countries, so the Canadian visa officers in the 100 countries will screen them. They will check, okay, is this document legitimate? I'll call the bank and make sure, you have the financial. And actually, that's a very important criteria when they're granting visas. If you don't get a visa, then it means 60% probably you don't have enough financial means to do that.
Chair, am I okay to keep asking questions?
Yeah.
So in theory, when an international undergraduate student comes to PI, they should be able to pay for their tuition and their living expenses. Now, we're experiencing inflationary environments here, and so I guess I'm trying to figure out where the problems are occurring, because in theory they should be able to come here, they should be able to afford housing, they shouldn't be short on food and everything, they shouldn't be having to struggle to make ends meet. That's what it seems like on the surface, but obviously there is a problem. Can you comment on why that problem's happening? Is it just purely inflationary measures, or are there other things that are happening there?
I think there's a number of reasons. This is an excellent point. That you're right, there are challenges. On paper, it looks like they should be able to, they have provided evidence that they have the financial means. That's at the beginning though, but then things change in the future. They come here, their program is 4 years. They initially had, they would indicate that their father was earning a salary, the father would pay, but then after a year, circumstances have changed. Like during COVID, my parents became ill, my father lost his job, I can't support, and then lots of problems can happen after that. So this is one of the reasons why, bursaries, another part about bursaries and scholarships, I would say, is the ones that are available often exclude international students. Domestic students are eligible, but not international students. So their eligibility is challenging. So these circumstances in life for all of us, they change. We have a 4-year projection, but then after 1 or 2 years, things change. And so we as a university try all of our best efforts to try to support them. And the co-op education, the experiential learning things, these are all important, not only from their learning perspective, but practically to earn some extra money as well.
Sorry, Chair. Yes. I really appreciate it's a tough area to talk about really as well. And I mean, again, in theory, this should be happening really on an exception basis. You would think that the vast majority of undergrad students wouldn't have those exceptional circumstances happening in their lives where, their financial situation changes like that. But it seems, at least based on, what the media is reporting and that we're seeing larger numbers. And so I wanted to get to the root of that. And it's tricky business, because as a province, we want to support international students because we want them to come and live on PEI and contribute to our economy and fill all our jobs. But at the same time, we want them to honor, what they've said they're going to do. And so it's a tough one to talk about. So I really appreciate that. And I guess I want to know a little bit more about why it's a larger group of undergraduate students that seem to be, as opposed to just those exceptions. And you mentioned housing maybe, but yeah.
If I could just add that you're right, there are exceptional cases and maybe the numbers have grown, but what I would say is that I think the percentage is relatively small, but as the number of students increases on campus, that low percentage will be more student numbers, and often those are the ones that we hear about. And we really, we're very empathetic at the university. There's all sorts of initiatives that we try to engage them in the community to help them out, because they are part of the UPEI family.
And that, for rent, it's just gone up, an astronomical amount for students.
Yeah.
It used, it's like it used to be that they could go to Browns Court and
Right.
4 of them could rent a place for probably, $1,200, but, that same place now might be, $800 more, we used to say to students, okay, budget, probably $500, for your off-campus room. We now tell them $800 for just a room off campus, not including the cost of food on PEI, which is extremely high.
One of the things we do with graduate students is we try to set a minimum financial support package for graduate students that come, so that they don't come here in poverty. And what happens though is the professor, if without a fellowship program, sorry to come back to this one again, but it just means it's eating more out of a professor's given research grant. But we are very conscious of making sure that there are minimum support packages that we're providing, so that they're able to come here and be able to find a place to live and meet the cost of living.
Chair, if I could get back on the list, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, it's Robert.
Just to kind of wrap up on my side of there, so I heard you say that UPEI is about 1,700 international students in total, is it? I'm assuming that there's also, we'd have to add on Holland College's numbers, but just to kind of verify the numbers that
Last
you
year
have.
we were 16.
Yeah, 1572 last year.
Last year.
It's in the-
1572 last year, and
Yeah.
that, obviously, Holland College would also have a sizable number
Yeah.
as well. Okay, just try to get a bit of a sense. You'd mentioned you track a lot of the graduates that graduate from UPEI, both the domestic and
Yeah.
international. Do you get any sense of where they're actually going to? I mean, regardless of whether the statistics as a percentage are right or wrong, for what evidence that you have, are they going to other provinces? Are they going back to their home country? Where are we losing these students to? If we're retaining a small number, what would we be? Where's our competition?
Yeah, that's interesting that we're saying international students and retaining them in the province. I'm not sure there's a big difference between retaining international students versus our own domestic, because even our own domestic students who finish, there are many who leave the province.
Oh, yeah,
So,
my
so in
daughter's
that
one,
sense,
yeah.
coming back to the question, where do international, what are they doing when they stay in the province? I would say that they are really contributing in major ways to the economic growth. You look at BioVectra and all these other companies that are growing, startup companies. A significant portion are international students. We gave you a few examples on the slides here. So I think that they are really, they bring, like I mentioned before, diversity, different perspectives, different backgrounds. They are very energetic. They have a lot of initiative. They want to stay in the province, and I think growth of the knowledge economy in PEI is going to be it's a significant contributor. If you look at Silicon Valley just as an example, many or most of the CEOs of these companies are international students that have gone to places like Stanford, Caltech, and all these others. So I think I would contend that they are going to become increasingly leaders of in our community, organizations, in companies.
Rob?
Well, I certainly get the benefits of those that
Yeah.
stay. I'm just wondering what's our competition? Where are these people going that aren't staying? I guess do you have any sense of that? I guess based on, I'm not saying on a percentage, but of the ones that you've tracked and do have communication with, and that they've left Prince Edward Island, regardless, I guess, whether they're domestic students or international students, where's our competition? Where did they go? Did they go back to their home country, home province, or whatever? Or do you have any indication of what?
The ones that I know, a lot of the students that have graduated and, have gotten jobs with accounting firms or CRA, different companies.
Yeah.
Often they're looking for the
Yeah.
exact same things as the domestic students. And I just want to come back to what Dr. Natter said is about opportunity also for advancement. I think that especially with this, I'm just going to come back to that graduate fellowship too. I had a conversation with Dr. Hamill about this, and I think that growing the level of research at UPEI and therefore allowing companies to scale up, allowing more opportunities for advancement. I think, we have some very bright, talented people, and, they may get that first job, but they, like anybody, they want to move ahead, right? And the more we grow on PEI and have more opportunities to move into upper positions, the ones that I know that have left have often sometimes gone maybe even just to maybe it's even the same firm, but it could be the same firm in a different province where they're moving into a higher position. They may have gone to Deloitte & Touche in Halifax, for example. I know some finance students that have actually gone to other provinces, moved up, but then have actually just come back here, to take new jobs at CRA. So there's a lot of some of the students that leave actually want to come back. I actually just gave a reference the other day for somebody who's moving to another province. He's moving up in, his field, but he's like, but if the opportunity comes up, I want to come back. So it's, I think that, we're a small province, right? And
Yes, just to build on that, I think when we ask where do they go, it also depends on the discipline that they study. So If we say nurses, for example, where do they go? We like to retain as many as we can in the province, but there's a huge national shortage. So I would say they probably go to every other province. If we talk about business grads, you know, the ones that are in finance, many of them stay here, but, you know, there's a big downtown Toronto, there's a big financial sector, insurance, stock market, many of them would go there. Engineers who have an interest in the aerospace sector, so those would say go to Montreal. Some have an interest in the oil and gas sector, they would go to Alberta. So it really depends, I guess, on the discipline of which they have studied.
Rob?
Yeah, no, and I have a daughter that graduated her undergraduate degree at UPEI, and she went to Germany, and she's working there. With the reasons, pay was one big issue. Advancement, you're another right in that. Not a lot of starter positions for what she was wanting to do at the pay that, and you know, you have student debts and things of that nature. So the reality is, it is a global, a global marketplace, and the reality is that we are a province that. Maybe at the most we might get 200,000 people here. So, you know, we're never going to be able to overcome a lot of those things to a certain degree. So I just think that keep doing what you're doing and try to retain as many as you can. But
you know, that's very true. But you know what I would also add, though, is many that leave the province, from what I've heard, if and when there's an opportunity,
they come back.
They love to come back. They're
Yeah.
islanders at heart, and they really would love to come back.
Yeah, they form great connections here. I mean, I know of a student who, you know, was basically like, you know, when I first got here, I thought, oh my gosh, where did I land? You know, where's the metro? Upon graduation, it's like, this was the best choice ever. I've made such a strong community here. I can't imagine wanting to be anyplace else. So they do want to stay. And I think that we have to also look at what a short period of time we've been looking at. You know, when you look at those numbers, we're really only talking about since like 2017, 2018, when our admission numbers just jumped exponentially, right? You had 4 years to graduate those people, you know, so we haven't been doing this very long, and from the amount of time we have been doing it, I think we're doing really good, you know?
Thank you.
Trish?
Thank you, Sharon. I just wanted to go back briefly to a discussion that we were having a few minutes ago about economic hardship that international students may face, and many of them do face when they're here on PEI. I think that, well, I know that the more productive way to look at that conversation is to not to say why don't international students have enough money when they come here, but what are the factors that those students are facing when they get here that are forcing them into these situations where they are not able to make ends meet. So I'm thinking about, you know, food costs. We mentioned transportation as a big factor. You know, one of the other factors we talked about was housing. We haven't discussed, you know, we've heard about situations, for example, where international students have faced illegal rent increases and they don't know because they don't know, you know, the laws here. You know,
We've been doing a lot of advocacy on that. Oh, I bet.
Yeah, actually, could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I do think that's really important, an important piece of this story.
And Jerry, you would know this, you know, all the things we've been doing.
Yeah, so we have been working with the PEI Housing Alliance, I forgot the name. Anyway, so like about the you know, legal aid students can turn to, but actually our staff members have also been doing workshops to tell students, you know, we give them the brochures, the housing guide, and then say, okay, this is what you know, they have to increase their rent according to whatever it's officially given. And speaking of that, there's a lot of concern about the recent ideas of increasing rent. That's a very big concern. And but like you said, a lot of students, they probably they don't, in their own country, they don't realize that they have their rights. So and then we do a lot of outreaching, but they may not even be aware of that. So we're trying our best to raise awareness and also engage students, and then provide a concrete, like our staff members would call landlords if their deposit is illegally confiscated, and there have been numerous occasions we provided that support.
This year, like what we've started doing now, besides just the orientation when students arrive, is we're actually doing online orientation throughout the summer months prior to arrival, and a couple of the sessions that we've done has been on knowing your rights as a tenant and knowing your responsibilities as a tenant. We share, in our pre-package, we share the PEI rental guide with them, and we've hosted sessions on, where to go if you have an issue, what's the role of IRAC, what's the role of, different supports that you have. So we're trying to increase education levels for all of our students. We actually just even put on Facebook just the other day after the rent increase, what's your landlord allowed to do? What are the rules regarding allowable rent increases? So through social media, through online sessions, we're really trying to get the word out to help students with that knowledge.
Can I just like to add a point? We're talking about, this has come up a few times, financial hardship for international students. This is certainly an issue, and we've talked about that. I would like to say that it's not isolated to international students. We have a number of domestic students that also face financial hardship. So there may be articles in the newspaper, of which I haven't seen all of them, that talk about international students in hardship. I wouldn't like this to come across in any way to say that somehow this is a problem that with international students, that sometimes it can be portrayed that way. Like if we talk about financial hardship and then we're just talking about international students, it's like, oh, is there some kind of perception now around international? That's not the intention, but I would just like to point that out, that when we talk about financial hardship, we should talk about all students, because there are lots of domestic students and PEI students that are also facing hard economic times and challenged as well. So I don't want this to kind of go in a direction where this is somehow like a negative against it. I know that's not the intent. I understand that, but I would like a broader discussion thanks.
Thank you. Trish?
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate that clarification. And I think certainly it's not, in the example that I mentioned previous around illegal rent increases, that's something that, domestic students have faced as well, quite honestly, absolutely. So yes, economic hardship is something that many students experience, whether international or domestic, absolutely. And thank you for the work that you're doing to inform students about the rules around rent and rental increases and what is allowed and what isn't allowed, and how to be aware of those issues. I wonder, would you have any suggestions for government to be more? Could they be more proactive, do you think? Is there any recommendations to protect students in particular from these types of issues?
I think probably some consultation, pre-decision consultation or feedback from a wider community will be really helpful.
Yeah, I guess, just following on that, if, as it pertains to students, any more dialogue, thank you for inviting us to this session, because this goes a long way, I think, right? And more dialogue. We can have joint workshops on the topic. I know the provincial government has committees, continued dialogue, so that these issues can be brought to the forefront, at least from the perspective of post-secondary education.
I do have one little comment to add. Just to understand the constraint, one of the constraints that international students have is while they're on a study permit, they have to maintain full-time status all semesters. That's if they want to apply for a postgraduate work permit at the end. And I would say 80% of our students want to apply for that work permit at the end of the education. Some are like, no, I'm going back home, my family's got a business, and I'm fine. They have to be registered every semester in Canada, but then they also have to be full-time. And they have the constraint of only being able to work 20 hours a week off campus. However, immigration has the rule that you can combine on-campus and off-campus to exceed that 20 hours. So on-campus jobs are highly sought after for a variety of reasons. Also because of the great mentoring that happens when you have an on-campus position. Some of our students who've had on-campus positions in our office have gone to work for the province, have gone to work for federal government. They have top positions in finance firms because of that extra level of support they get with on-campus employment. So they could then have a job on campus maybe for 10 hours and then work 20 hours off campus to make up that difference in the cost of living. So having support from the province for experiential learning opportunities and increasing our number of on-campus positions would be extremely helpful. When we look across Canada from the CBIE report that Jerry referenced earlier, we have a lower number of on-campus positions compared to a lot of other jurisdictions. So greater support for these positions would be extremely helpful, and also something the province did that we got to take advantage of for the first time this past summer was the post-secondary student program was extended to international students for funding. So we were able to hire one of our existing international students to work over the summer and have their employment supplemented. Because under the federal government, international students don't qualify for those programs. Like the student program offered through the Federal Service Canada, international students don't qualify. So often, even sometimes when jobs do come up on campus, they end up going to a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident because we're getting that work subsidized. This gave us an opportunity to actually hire an international student. So we would love to see that program continue and probably also extend into the school year so that we can, help with more on-campus positions. And, we could have TAs as our graduate programs grow. We could have more student assistant positions. It would just be amazing.
Yeah, this summer, the provincial support, that's hugely welcomed and very, very important to our international students.
Patricia?
That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Brad?
Thank you, Chair. So, one of the things that I really struggle with, and I know you guys probably do as well, is we have so many employers on PEI that need people so badly. I hear about it every time I go out. We need people, but we have all these people that want to work, international students, for example, and we can't connect them. And we heard about the 1 year versus 2 year contracts and things like that. I noticed you didn't talk a lot about employers in your presentation. I just wondering, do you interface with business organizations like Chambers of Commerce, CFIB, and those sort of things? I think it sounds like, and maybe I'm going down the wrong path, and maybe it's way more complicated than this. I always joke there should be that was easy button during these standing committee meetings, whatever, and MLA says, oh, that was easy, I just solved that problem. But maybe, do you have maybe more communication with some of these employers through their organizations would really go a long way. I just wanted you to comment on that.
So Brad, thank you. Yes. So the short answer is yes. We do have a lot of connections, but I would say we can be doing more. There's room for improvement as a university. We can be doing more, and we are trying. We shall. So I'll give a few examples of the things that we do, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues here. We have, in engineering, for example, we have clinic design projects that are closely integrated with industry partners. There's dozens of companies and organizations that participate in the mentorship of students and work with them directly. So that's one form of engagement. We have a number of partners from community and industry that come in as visiting speakers at the university. There are some programs that have advisory councils. I think we should have more of them, but we do have some where there are members from the community that come and sit and provide guidance and input on the programs. Experiential learning and co-op education, there are many employers around the province that have hired students. And I would say I've seen the list, and I think it's at least 100 organizations, I would say, in the province. But there is just on that note, I would put that I would like to encourage the province through IPEI to continue providing support, because it's a really important program. Employers need work-ready skills, but I hope that the province would see that as a priority as well. So They're very important because they provide work-ready skills that employers need. You're right, there are a lot of graduates and employers need different skills, and maybe the programs aren't exactly aligned with the skills because programs are not designed around learning a software package that this one company needs. They need to get a broader set of skills, but that's another reason why the co-op education is so important, because students develop those work-integrated skills. So I'll pass it over to my colleagues if they have more.
I think you made excellent points, Dr. Formally and informally connecting with the employers. So like our co-op, a steady state program that's, as I mentioned, funded by a co-op and the province. So they do, like they organize the student bus tour. They take them to the rural areas and then get them talk to the, like the farmers, the shipbuilding yards. And also, they do take students to attend the Chamber of Commerce networking receptions, and that has been, it's relatively new, but after we realize it's more important to close that gap, the experiential learning for students, so it's coming along. But like Dr. Nera said, we will continue to do more of that.
We're also, this didn't come up, but we're also a member of a working group.
Right, sure, I mentioned.
Yeah, with the province. I don't know if you know Teresa too, who's one of your, works in
Office of Immigration.
Office of Immigration. It's also, workforce advancement. So Teresa used to be my student assistant years ago, okay? And so we already had this great relationship, and then she got a job at the province. And we both obviously are like, okay, we want to help students. So we've always worked kind of very collaboratively. Okay, you're going to come to campus, you're going to do presentations for the students. And this kind of a few years ago, we started talking like, okay, I think we need to expand this, and this working group was formed. Now she's going to be going out and speaking to employers, because one of the areas we saw was that employers also needed more education on what the immigration rules are, understanding, it's not a scary thing to hire an international student or a new graduate, and to make that process for them to have a wider understanding of all of the ease of actually hiring an international student. So we are working with people in the province right now to try to look after where some of these gaps might be. So, and we've had great success so far, like even back in, I think, 2018, the PR program for the international graduate students was revised based on feedback that we got from students, from the presentations that were held, and she told us that it was like an increase of about 400% in the number of people who applied under the PEI international graduate stream after that program was revised. So these kinds of sessions where we can find, okay, if we just need to tweak this, or if we do this, it can be a little bit better, have had great success so far. And I think that supporting provincial employees to come to campus and to continue that relationship is really important.
Could I clarify one thing? On one of the slides we mentioned that the creation of an entrepreneurship stream for immigration for PI graduates meaning both the grad and undergrad. So like Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, they both have the provincial immigration program. They have a category for students. If you create a business, then the province will nominate you for immigration, but we do not have here. I have attended a few workshops with the colleagues from Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and they have told us how successful they have been. So that's what I meant. We meant in the PowerPoint slide, the creation of an entrepreneurship, especially with Dr. Neris mentioned about the grad students, more support. They're more mature. If they are done, probably there will be down the road, there will be more opportunities for the entrepreneurship stream for students. So right now we don't have that yet.
Brad, maybe do you have many more questions? We do have our other presenters coming in. I hate to cut anyone short, but
I just have a couple here. Yeah. I think it's just really important that we connect students with jobs, and not necessarily even upon graduation, but you talked about over the summer and these sorts of things, and maybe these are not necessarily the jobs that are in their field or in their area of study. There's lots of jobs that, work in the fish plants, things like that. And hopefully, that's the sort of thing you could encourage and work on. But so Chair, the next question I wanted to ask had to do with, the processing times, and you mentioned that in a couple of different areas, but I was wondering, we can definitely do things to improve on the provincial side, but can you speak to what's happening on the federal side with these long processing times? Like, I'm trying to figure out where the problem is, and then I think, as a member of this committee, if we're going to make recommendations to lobby the federal government, this sort of thing, I want to know where that should happen specifically.
So the bigger picture, basically, with regard to the over 640,000 international students present in Canada, like well over 500,000. PEI's share of international students, it's still pretty small, but it's even smaller, much smaller than Nova Scotia. So we're not regarded as a big player. So when the federal government processes student files, or they give different programs, like Ontario Rural has program, Manitoba has one, we just wanna to ask the provincial government to advocate to make sure that we are not crowded out by the big Ontario players, because they have so many students, but we just want to make sure we don't get too far away from that, because when you're up, the federal government provides the students and there's a long line, and but we would like to be treated as a provincial entity, not to be crowded into their own, the big line. Because you have the provincial nomination part, that part I think has been working relatively good. So once it gets to the federal government, and sometimes we help students to make inquiries, just know, it's a little murky on that front, right?
IRCC really is playing catch up now, I think, in terms of their technology, their staffing. We're just probably a bit overwhelmed. And last year, they thought they had their banner year for the number of applicants, and then it just grew again by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. There's more and more people across the world who want to come to Canada, and they're really struggling, I think, to keep up with the level of applications that are coming in. You add in the pandemic over the last few years where people couldn't go and do biometrics, they couldn't, it was, and also they're bringing in a new computer system right now, so the website constantly goes down. There's just a lot of issues. I know they've increased their staffing, a lot, but it takes a long time to properly train an IRCC officer. It's a major undertaking. It's not just like hiring people when they're ready to go. Right? You have to have in-depth knowledge of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act.
Yeah, Brian?
If I could just make one comment, Chair, and this will be it. I'll be done. We can get on to the next presenters. I know the perception you'd mentioned that, how come private developers aren't building more housing? Like, what's going on here? And on PEI, I mean, there's private developers, they're developing a lot of places, but they're all just fully strapped out. Like, the construction industry is just building. They're not necessarily building the housing that you need, though, right? And that's definitely part of the issue. But I mean, on PEI, and you'd mentioned Brown's Court, for example. So that's a housing development that's been around for a long time. We have the strictest rent controls in the country, right? And so we definitely do.
Okay, hold on.
I think this is where we head out, is it?
Rules need to be enforced.
Brad, do you have a specific question or no?
Yeah. So
okay. Can you please get your
so I'm really glad to hear that you're you're going in and you're providing the supports to make sure that tenants know the rights and everything, but it's very important, I think, that if you know the existing housing areas that, because if they're housing there, they've been very limited into how much they can raise their rent, and it's very, very strict controls. Maybe not the toughest in Canada, okay. But I was wondering, do you proactively, as a university, go out and work with landlords and say, you know, we know that you are a place where students typically live. We want to work with you to help with the placements.
We have an off-campus housing coordinator that looks after that. We also have homestay on campus, homestay coordinator. And even our VP of Students and Registrar, Donna Sutton, has actually personally made a lot of phone calls. I think she's probably called every hotel, motel, any place in the Charlottetown area to try to house our students. Yeah, there's been a lot of outreach and scrambling.
I also want to say a big thank you to Holland College. This semester, they, after, see the CBC interview and things, Holland College reached out to us and say we have 20-something rooms. That's a huge help, especially for first-year students. You are new, you can't sign a lease, you haven't seen it. There's a lot of logistic challenges. Like we can, sign it for them. We can say, okay, it checks out, but still for them. So Holland College has been, so the collegial collaboration is greatly appreciated by Holland College.
That's good.
Right. Brad?
The majority of landlords really want to help students find housing, and they're working as hard as they can to do that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. I think that is probably a great time to thank our guests for coming in. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Jerry. Really appreciate you taking some time and answering all of our questions. So we are going to take probably a brief, I say about 5 minutes or so. We do need a few minutes extra just to change over our presentation. So thank you very much for coming in today. We'll take a short
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's wonderful.
That's great.
And we are back for our second presentation today. No strangers to the Standing Committee here for Education. We have from the UPEI Student Union, Adam McKenzie, and Bosa. Also, Noah Manholland, who's the Policy and Research Coordinator at the University of Prince Edward Island Student Union, will be joining us briefly. So I'm going to get you both to say your name again and your position for Hansard, and you know the drill. We'll go through your presentation and save questions until the end.
Adam McKenzie, President and CEO of UPEI Student Union.
I'm Bosa, the Vice President of Academic and External with the UPEI Student Union.
Perfect. So yeah, if you're ready to, we appreciate the presentation. And if you're ready to start, we're ready to go.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having us back. If it's okay, Chair, I'd like to first just answer some questions we left open on Tuesday.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
I know Mr. Perry had asked us about how many UPEI students were had started Career Connect, and there were 906 new starts for Career Connect this year. And that's the best figure that they could give us. In terms of the mental health funding that is being sent to UPEI, this is used for a few things, such as like they're currently working to use it to hire a fourth counselor, or it was used to hire a fourth counselor, excuse me. They're hoping to get to one counselor per 1,000 students. This money also funds peer supports, and it's also kind of like office things like buying Zoom licenses for Zoom therapy sessions and things like that. And then in terms of the food banks, I asked our Vice President Finance and Administration, Lena Debu, on a scale of 1 to 10, how busy is our food bank? Our food bank isn't monitored, but she thinks it's about a 5 out of 10. And then of course on Compass the other night, Sister Susan Kidd, who runs the university food bank, said she had the busiest day ever the other day. So, and then.
In regards to the question about the co-op and how it affects international students, so I reached out to the co-op office, and they said usually students are advised to take one course per semester during the co-op work term, and international students are also going to pay the international students fee, which is about $4,000, and that is really a lot to pay while taking one course in school. So that really affects international students in terms of co-op education.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
That's it from Tuesday. So we'll get right into it, I guess. So what we did here, this again will be this will be very similar to Tuesday. All these questions are from the same survey, and you're actually going to see the same question a couple times, but what's different is that we filtered so that we only have international student responses, and we kind of just took any question that we thought might be relevant to the conversation of international student retention. So some quick stats first. 22% of students felt that the housing situation was affecting their academic ability. 40% of international students wanted to leave PEI after graduation, and 70% of international students said that their decision would change if housing was more affordable. Are you currently on PEI? The majority, yes, there were about 25 who are not. I would assume that they are taking remote programs. Where do your parents/guardians live in regards to the university? About 30 said that their parents/guardians live within 15 kilometers of UPEI, and the rest, about almost 100, their parents live outside over 15 kilometers of UPEI. So student place of residence. The majority of international students are currently living in apartments, 44% of them. 27% of them are living in houses, and then 16% are living in townhouses. After that, 6% living in a duplex, 4% living in on-campus residence, and 3% other. How close is your place of residence to UPEI? Less than 1 kilometer was 28%, which is great. 1 to 2.5 kilometers was 30%, and that's the majority. 24% was 2.6 to 5 kilometers. 11% was 5.1 to 10. 5% was 10.1 to 20, and only 3% are more than 20 kilometers away, and that's about 6 students of 198. So daily means of transportation, the majority of international students are taking the bus. Through the student union, we have what's called the UPEISU, and that's basically students buy into it every semester, and it allows you to ride the bus for free, including the rural transportation routes. After that, though, 36% are walking, 16% are driving, 2% are biking, 2% are other, and only 1 student of 198 gets dropped off. So the number of bedrooms in the student's place of residence, 4% of students are living in a bachelor place of residence, 8% are living in a 1-bedroom, 32% are living in a 2-bedroom, 34% are living in a 3-bedroom, and then it drops off to 8% with a 4-bedroom and 15% with 5+ bedrooms. How many people total are there in your household, including yourself, was the question that was asked. 8% is 1, 26% with 2, 28% with 3, 20% with 4, and 18% with 5 or 5+. And what is the status of the people that international students are living with? Other students is 51%, non-students is 10%, both students and non-students is 25%, parents, guardians, other family is 6%, and I live alone is 7%. So obviously with over 50% international students are living with other students. Do you have a signed rental agreement? 82% said yes, 18% said no, and 0 said I live with parents, family / not applicable. So price of student rent per month, specific to international students, 350 to 450 is 18% of respondents, 450 to 550, 19%, 550 to 650, also 19%, 650 to 750, 17%, 750 to 850, 9%, 850 to 1,000, 7%, 1,000 plus, 4%, I don't pay rent, 4%, and I don't know, 2%. So the majority there is between 450 and 650. I think that's pretty good. Obviously, we want that to be cheap, and it's good to see that the majority isn't above 650. Utilities included in rent. 83% of respondents have heat included. 63% have electricity included, 61% have snow removal, 54% have lawn maintenance, 54% have internet, and 10% have none, and then 5% respond with other. 10% is about 19 students out of 196, and the fact they're getting no utilities included in their rent, that is certainly an issue. So maximum amount students could afford for rent per month in Canadian dollars. 17% said they could afford 350 to 450, 23% 450 to 550, 24% 550 to 650, 17% 650 to 750, 8% 750 to 850, 7% 850 to 1,000, and only 6% could afford 1,000 or 1,000 plus. So what type of rental agreement do you have? 3 respondents, which is about 2%, said they have a weekly agreement. 84 students, which is 42%, have a monthly agreement. 104, which is over 52%, said yearly, and then about 4% said other. So the majority of international students are on yearly rental agreements. Do you work during the school year? This was a question from the other day. 22% do not. 2% work full time. 9% work 0 to 10 hours. 62% work 10 to 20. 3% work 20 to 30, and less than 2% work 30 to 35. So as we said on Tuesday, international students are capped at 20 hours a week off campus. So you do really see it drop off after 20 hours because it goes from 10 to 20 at 62% to 3% with 20 to 30. Annual income, the majority here is less than 5,000. That is 41%, and then the second largest group was 5,000 to 10,000 with 35%, and then 14%, 10,000 to 15,000, 6%, 15 to 20,000, and 4% with over 20,000. So it's safe to say international students are certainly working on a tighter budget than their domestic and Canadian-born counterparts. Total financial aid received by students, 58% of international students received zero financial aid, 9% received less than 500, 15% 500 to 1,000, 5% 1,000 to 2,000, 3% 2,000 to 5,000, and 2% 5,000 to 8,500, and then 8% 8,500 plus. So again, the majority of international students not receiving much help in the form of student financial aid. Then educational debt accrued by students, the majority, thankfully, has less than $5,000 worth of debt, the majority being 61%, 5,000 to 20,000, 15%, 20 to 50,000, 10%, 50 to 100,000, 4%, 100 to 150,000, 3%, 150 to 200,000, 4%, and 250,000 or more, 4%, which is 8 students out of the 198 that responded. Does the cost of housing affect your ability to pursue full-time studies? The majority said yes. 107 of 188 said yes, which is 57%. So this was a question on Tuesday, and I believe when all students were involved, the majority was actually no. Or am I thinking of a different question? Yeah.
Domestic students.
Yeah. So when we switch it over to international students, the majority becomes yes. Has the current Charlottetown vacancy rate affected your ability to change housing? The majority is, again, yes, with 69% saying yes. Would you say the current housing situation has affected your academic ability? The majority of 78% said no. That's fantastic. And then the other 22% said yes. Do you plan on staying and living in PEI after graduating from UPEI? 61% said yes, 39% said no. Would your decision to leave be different if the vacancy rate were higher and housing was more affordable? 71%, almost 71% said yes, and just over 29% said no. So 127 students out of 179 felt that they would not be leaving if they could find more affordable housing. And now into mental health, we had asked students to rate their mental health on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most optimal. The majority, there's no clear-cut answer, but the majority is 20% with a 7 out of 10, which is pretty good. Only 10% said 10 out of 10. Only 2% said 1 out of 10, which again is great. The answer with the least amount of answers was 2 out of 10, and that had about a 2% answer. And then items affecting decline in student mental health. So this just kind of gives us some insight as to what students are dealing with. 35% responded with depression, 38% with seasonal depression, 15% with thoughts of suicide, 70% with financial stress or other financial issues, 38% with housing instability, 6% with substance abuse, 0% with sexual and gender-based violence, which is great, 41% with academic struggles, 71% with academic stress, 35% feeling isolated, 20% with anxiety surrounding COVID-19, and 54% with general anxiety. Has your mental health been affected by any of the following? Fear of COVID-19, 30%, the switch from online to in-person learning, 60%, finding housing and PEI, 52%, and other 11%. So the switch from online to in-person learning really hit international students hard, as well with 60%, as well as finding housing and PEI, as that was 52%. Student tuition fees in the past year, so under $5,000, 0, 5,000 to 7,500, 9%, 7,500 to 10,000, 16%, 10,000 to 12,500, 8%, 12,500 to 15,000, 21%, and 15,000 plus was 47%. So obviously the majority of international students are paying over $15,000 a year to attend UPEI. How much did your academic and educational materials cost this past year? The majority said under 500, which is great. That was almost 41%. 36% 500 to 750, 17% 750 to 1,000, 4% 1,000 to 1,500, and only 2% with 1,500 plus. Did you buy the recommended required academic/educational materials this past year? The majority, 75% said yes. Did you have to work extra hours or borrow more money to afford your academic materials? 35% say yes, I had to work more. 27% say yes, I had to borrow or find more money, and 38% said no, I budgeted enough money. So the majority there was no, which is also good. And then please give us a general breakdown of your living expenses. Food was the winner there with 95%, rent and utilities 92%, transportation 49%, school supplies 79%, and prefer not to say 2%. That's it for our stats.
That's perfect. Thank you. Is there something that you wanted to add, Iabosa?
Yes, for page 3.
Sorry, just for clarification, page 3 or slide 3?
Page 3.
Page 3, okay.
Yes, just talk on how close is your place of residence to UPEI. So as we know, the T3 transit doesn't work in some areas in the evening, and students that live very far away from school have to take cabs when they have evening labs and probably evening classes. And that really affects students a lot, because most students are always like, why doesn't the T3 buses work at this time, and why do we have to pay cabs for this?
So I will, thank you, Iabosa. So I will open it up to the floor. We'll start with Brad.
Thanks. Great to see you guys back here today. I wanted to start with, the tuition fees that international students pay, because our previous presenters today were just talking about how they are substantially higher than domestic students, but they felt that UPEI was actually very competitive in the grander scheme of international student fees, at least in Canada. Like, it's a better deal to come to PEI than other places. I guess my question is, how do you feel about international student fees, and do you think they're too high or too low? Do you feel that UPEI is competitive, and are the fees appropriate?
Firstly, yes, UPEI is actually one of the most affordable schools in Canada, but still the international fees are very high, like paying $4,000 for, and some students just take 3 courses in a semester, and then at the end, sometimes it amounts to like $9,000 a semester for taking like 4 courses. That is really high for students to pay, considering the amount that they have to work during the summer and then have to work during the school year to also get food and also be able to pay for other basic living expenses.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Brad?
Yeah, and I could totally see that. It must be tricky to do budgeting when international students come to Prince Edward Island. I mean, we know we're in an inflationary environment. We know that, especially for new housing, the cost has gone up a lot, and we're seeing potentially a large increase this year in rents. I guess my question is, when international students are considering coming to Prince Edward Island to live and to study at UPEI, do you feel like the vetting process is fair when they're looking at whether you'll be able to succeed here, and especially the financial side of things, you know, the questions they ask, and do you feel that when you get here, you know, sort of what you were told about the amount you needed to budget, the amount of money you needed, matches the reality?
Yes. Yes, I think the amounts that students usually budget for their fees and other basic living expenses usually matches it. But through this pandemic, that really affected a whole lot of things. Like back home, like in my country, that really affected my parents' business, which affected like how I pay for my bills. So this summer I had to, for me, I'm also a student, I had to work more hours, and also looking at other students out there, most students I've heard from a lot of students that they had to work more hours because most of their bills are now on them now. They have to pay their tuition themselves, they have to pay their house rent, and some persons live in a house where they have to pay for the 1 year lease. Like in my place, for example, I live in a place where I have to pay from September to April at once, or I can choose to pay it twice, but I'm also paying like approximately $3,000 at once, which is a lot, while paying for a school fees of like $9,000 a semester, and you also have to get groceries during the semester, and also keep some money for like late classes that you have to take cabs or other things students have to get to.
Brad?
Yeah, so obviously the last few years in particular have been really tough, and so you're saying that international students, many would have experienced changes in their finances coming from their home country, their parents, their family, wherever that came from, as well as changes, increases in the cost of food and the cost of housing and that sort of thing on PEI. And this is, I think this is at the root of what's going on here, why you see students struggling, because in my opinion at least, it seems like the expectation of the finances doesn't meet the reality for those two reasons. What do you think plays the bigger role? Do you think it was changes in the source of revenue that you expected coming on your end, or do you think it's just the large increases and the inflation and the situation here on Prince Edward Island with, you know, for example, the cost of housing going up, those sort of things?
I am going to answer that question in regards to myself.
Oh, okay.
I think mine, it was really from like getting money from back home, because like my first semester here, and since I started schooling here until last year fall, I usually don't work during the school year until this pandemic really affected my parents' business, and then I had to be working during the school year so that I can be able to like cover up some things for myself. And also to speak for other students out there, a lot of students have actually been reaching out that they have to work here and also pay their bills, and the inflation here has really affected everything. Like usually you go for groceries with like $80, you can be able to get a few stuffs that will last for like some weeks or more, like 2 weeks or more than, but now like $80, you take it to the grocery store and it's really small.
All right.
Brad?
And I just wanted to, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, it's really, really trying when financial situations change like that. And I fully appreciate the terrible position that some international students would be in. So I want to thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to see, and I know you guys have come up with some recommendations. I think we heard some in the last presentation. Do you think, for example, that some of the tuition fees that you paid to become a student at UPEI, which we've said are fairly hefty, do you think in these sort of times some of those tuition fees should be used to help you with some of those changes that were unplanned and unexpected?
Yes, I really think if international students have grants, like grants that are just specific for international students, that as an international student you are eligible for it, though there are scholarship and other bursaries in UPEI, but those things are really, if you get it, it's just by luck. But I think if international students just have like a separate grant that as an international student, you just have to apply for it. That would really help international students like cover up some bills that they have to pay.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions? I don't want to put you on the spot by any stretch of the imagination, Noah, but we do thank you for joining us. Was there anything that you would like to add to the conversation or for our members?
So I don't know what was said. But the only things that I really wanted to add were when we analyzed why international students had additional struggles with academia because of being an international student, a lot of the commonalities, a lot of the reasons, because there's like, we give a question box on the SurveyMonkey so that they're able to tell us, basically if they have anything else they'd like to add. And a lot of what they said fell into a few main categories. For housing, the first one was that the houses that were available were too far away from UPEI. Okay. Because as an international student, it's actually more difficult to get a driver's license or lease a car and all of that sort of thing. So they're relying on public transportation or walking, which for them created a really bad experience and cut into their time that they would be using studying. The second one was that, properties are incredibly expensive right now. Attempting to rent is kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. So they said basically one student actually said that they had arrived on August 29th. Their rental agreement started September 1st, and then they had to be in a hotel room for 2 nights that they really couldn't afford. Because, as everybody knows, right, international tuition is larger, or more, sorry, than domestic. So they're being squeezed a lot financially at a time where it is really not a great thing to be squeezed financially. And then the third thing was that a lot of the landlords that they had, they reported problems with, like being inattentive to their needs, and it wasn't that they were asking for anything exorbitant, but there were, appliances in their rooms that were not functioning. And the landlord took a long time to respond to that. And so I think that if you give somebody a poor experience with attempting to find housing, coupled with the fact that, while there are jobs and everything available and PEI is a very nice place, it is also an acquired taste, right? Like we are a very small community relative to the rest of Canada. So it's very difficult for somebody to come here and to feel welcome, especially if their landlord's not responding, they need to walk a long distance to get places, and they're paying more than everybody else for the same services, when in reality they need much more. So I think that if you give somebody a poor experience as a student, when they finish being a student, they're not really gonna want to stick around, because I think they're starting to see UPEI as a sunken cost, as opposed to a thing that they really enjoyed. And it's not all of them, but it was a commonality within all of those responses. So I think that if we want to increase international student retention, we need to basically not make it worthwhile to come here, but at least make it so that we are as welcoming and easy to adjust from wherever they came from as possible.
Thank you, Noah.
I'll add to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, just to kind of Noah's point, we don't have an issue with getting international students here. UPEI has 31% of the population is international students from 95 different countries, and that's kind of one of the largest ratios, I guess, in the region. So we certainly don't have an issue getting them here, but I think it's the lack of income that they're making. As we saw, the majority of respondents said they make $5,000 or less. Compared to the massive tuition, the majority of respondents said $15,000 or more for tuition. I think that's making it very hard for them to even just finish their degree here, but also stay here after they do get their degree. So,
Thank you, Adam. I do actually have Trish Trish has a question?
Yeah, just quickly, and Noah, thank you so much for that really fantastic summary of the experience of so many international students when they come here to PEI and what some of the barriers or some of the reasons why they might not choose to stay or be able to stay. And I think that's where we need to start these discussions, and I said this earlier, but what are the factors that are happening here on PEI that are contributing to international students having a negative experience, facing economic hardship? So you mentioned issues, with landlords perhaps, or we talked about some of the experiences we know have happened with students who have faced illegal rent increases, right? So, what can we do here as a province to make it as welcoming, as positive an experience as possible so that they do want to stay, because these are people who are contributing so much to our economy and our society. So, Noah, I wondered if you could just highlight just briefly, like what would you like to see, the PEI government do in particular, because that's really what these meetings and discussions are about in committee. What can the PEI government do? What can be done to support international students, make it a positive experience that they want to live and stay here?
Well, I think Yabosa had a great point when she suggested a grant or some kind of financial subsidy to be here, because it is more expensive for them to go to school here. It's more expensive for them to rent here on average. It's, you talk, like, imagine if you took yourself and you moved to, say, Japan, right? It's such a big struggle because you don't know much about where you're going, and you just know that it's been promised to be this kind of island paradise, and you get here and then all of a sudden you're working harder than everybody else for the same thing. So I think some kind of financial subsidy to at least know that, at least have the government say, we recognize that it is difficult for you to be here and we appreciate the fact that you are here. Obviously, constructing more houses is, everybody's goal as well, right? Like, it's important that they are able to get to UPEI by walking not a large distance if they have to do that, because I think it would be, I guess I can speak to my experience. I went to school in Ontario for 6 months, and attempting to navigate that system initially was a nightmare for me. I got lost on a bus and ended 5 kilometers from where I was supposed to go. So even the ability to have ready access to transportation to take them to essential places, I think would be really important. And as well, I think if there could be just some kind of an acknowledgement, I think, because very often when people struggle, they want to be heard. And I think even having some kind of frequent or semi-frequent panel about talking with international students, pulling from UPEI and maybe Holland College as well, and just saying, hey folks, what do you want? Because I can sit here as a person who lives on PEI and has a house 15 minutes that way and talk to you about what I think the struggles of international students are, but I think the only way to truly know that is to ask them. And so I think that getting more international students in rooms like this talking about their struggles would go a long way to make sure that we can help them with those struggles.
Thank you.
Sorry, Yabosa, yeah, by all means.
And just to add to what Noah said about the international student going to Holland College, I've also heard from a couple of students saying that they had to withdraw their application from UPEI to Holland College because of the international fees or because of UPEI fees, and that's really affecting a lot of students as well.
Thank you. Trish, did you have a follow-up?
No. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, that was actually kind of what I was going to ask as well. Just maybe one quick question. Maybe I probably should have asked this before to the group prior, but like with the new residents coming in, is any of those, how are those, I think there's 270 rooms, do you know how those rooms are, like, are they open to international students? Are they open just to domestic students, or?
Yeah, I'm not entirely familiar with how the whole resident system works at UPEI, but I think that currently there's a wait list of current students at UPEI that will still need a residence come fall, well, this time next year. So I think that the students on that list will get priority, and I don't think there's any sort of disadvantage or advantage to any type of student.
Sounds great. Noah?
Hi, sorry, I can piggyback on that a little bit. Our wait list for those residences is actually over 400 students long. And so the 270 rooms will potentially cover that depending on how many are single and how many are double, and we don't have those statistics yet.
Yeah.
But I know that for most years, the residence building is full by May. There's just a massive backlog, and we've had students say, I applied to residence, I'm on the wait list, I'm number 330. There's no shot I'm gonna get a residence. And adding these rooms, I think, will help, but it won't do even remotely close to what we need to do because UPEI's student body population tends to trend upwards, particularly with international students. They now represent, I think, 30% of our student body. And we've had reports of them walking on foot to find apartments once they've been here for several hours at a time, which I think is the new residence building will not solve. And residence is also quite expensive for UPEI, so if you're already an international student, you're already paying more for tuition. I think that residence is not necessarily going to solve that problem because it's just going to add additional financial burden if you can even find a spot.
Okay, thank you. Just 1 second, I will go to, yeah. The other question is, like, I know, Adam, you've been great. The member from Charlottetown West Royalty mentioned in his questioning last week that he had met with you. I had the opportunity to meet with you when you first got elected. Have you met with any of the officials from the city of Charlottetown? Because what we discussed as well was, housing was probably one of the biggest issues facing not only the international students, but also, a lot of local. Have you talked to, the members from the city?
Yeah, Iabosa and I met with His Worship June or July, sometime over the summer, and we did have quite an extensive conversation around housing. The student union and the city seem to be fairly like-minded in its goals for housing, although he did kind of say it's more so of a provincial issue than a municipal issue. The municipal government can help, but can't really solve it on its own, which we understand, so.
Okay. I will go to Brad. Brad?
Thanks, Chair. We've sort of established that that UPEI has high tuition fees for international students, but probably a better deal than most other universities in Canada. Now, PEI has experienced probably the highest inflation in Canada. I mean, you could argue we started at a lower point because costs were lower, but without getting into the arguments, I would imagine international students at other universities and other provinces are experiencing similar problems where, like, this was my budget and this is where my money was coming from, and now I'm here and I've got increased costs, and back home my revenue coming in is not the same. Have you guys, and I know you haven't had a long time in your tenure yet, but have you guys connected with other universities or other international students at other universities to see if they've come up with any solutions or how they're dealing with these similar issues?
We have connected with other universities on a few things. This is not something I've ever talked about with my counterparts from around the Maritimes. I don't know about Iabosa though.
No, and sorry, no, just whenever you want to make a point, you go ahead, yeah.
So we haven't reached out directly about this issue, but I have done some research on this as to what other universities are doing, and the short answer is not a lot, which is not to say that they're not trying, but a lot of what because the students, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. The international students, the problems that they face everywhere. PEI is small, so the issue is exacerbated because it's not so easy to find reliable public transportation. There's no bus that comes every 10 minutes, even though we do have a bus system that takes them everywhere, right? In Ontario and in Alberta and these larger provinces, you have a very, very robust system of transportation. So when they find a house that is maybe in their price range but further away, they have a more reliable method of getting to where they need to go. So typically, the unique problem that PEI faces is that we are small. And so it's not, with a larger province, you can go further and find a place because there are just more places that exist. But with PEI, that is not the case. And so when we speak with other universities, the issues they're more trying to deal with are lowering international tuition and getting it to, in many ways, where PEI is. Because Canada-wide, it's 5 times the amount of a domestic student on average, which is crazy, right? And PEI does do much better than that. So their problems and our problems are not quite the same, even though they are all the same sphere. So they don't do a lot to alleviate our specific concerns, which is why we don't have a lot of statistics.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Brad? All right, well, that is great. We really do thank you coming in. As you had mentioned in your Survey Monkey, if there's anything that you did want to add or that we maybe neglected to ask you, I'll give you the opportunity now. No, that's perfect. All right, well, we thank you, and we are just going to continue quickly on with our agenda. So I do want to ask committee members if there is any new business. So I will ask for a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Brad, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks again for joining us.